My name is Bruce Fenner, and I currently serve as Director of Extension Ministries and Pastoral Care with the United Methodist Endorsing Agency. Prior to coming to UMEA, I served as an administrator with the federal prison system in Washington, D.C., which required oversight of several initiatives related to the President's management agenda, amongst them the development, implementation, and reporting on a faith-based reentry program which had a goal of lowering recidivism. We are also privileged to have join us in leadership today Lee Hayward. Lee is an organizational development specialist and an executive leadership coach of Hayward and Associates. Lee is a clergy member of the California-Nevada Conference and is endorsed through UMEA. Lee's professional and personal contributions have been honored on several occasions, including being named Tom Peters Company Featured Leadership Development Director and NASA's Contract Employee of the Year, as well as the recipient of the Achievement for Excellence in Engineering from NASA's Johnson Space Center. Welcome, Lee. I'm glad you're here on this program with us today. Yes. Merriam-Webster states, relevance is that which has a direct bearing on the matter at hand. This has never been more true than in today's workplace, where so much energy is centered upon bottom line thinking and return on investment. The relevance of work, resources, and positions are directly correlated to one's ability to communicate within an organization. Can we demonstrate our value in an organization's vision, mission statement, strategic plan through our relationships with the identified customer? If not, an inability to communicate relevance leads to termination of employment and or elimination of positions and a reduction in programmatic funding. As the endorsing agency, we are hearing the stories of our colleagues and witnessing the power of this management shift because of an inability to communicate relevance. To buoy up our programming and future ministries, to strengthen security of employment, it's imperative that we are experienced and understood by our colleagues and our organizational structures as relevant, not only as perceived by the primary customer, that being the patient or the military personnel or the inmate or the resident, but by the organization as well. That's today's paradigm. Using the vernacular of today, our ability to continually communicate what we do, the management term is outputs, with the resources that we have at hand or we need to acquire, known as the inputs, undergirded with measurable indicators, that's our evidence, determines the relevance with those we serve. That's the outcome. This program today is designed to strengthen your understanding of the key components of evidence-based management and to provide you with tools and resources for actively communicating your organizational relevance. To get started, it's imperative that you gather and understand your organization's mission statement, vision statement, organizational values and goals. These are the drivers behind your organization's existence and are known as the strategic plan components. At one point, each position in your organization came into existence in response to these drivers. The funding of departments is a response to these drivers. The continued relevance of each position and program funding is directly correlated to one's ability to communicate and give evidence detailing its overall organizational value. You probably know these strategic plan components, but as a reminder, we'll take a moment to refresh ourselves in the concepts. The overriding principle that guides the organization is the organizational vision. It defines what that organization wants to be. What is its deep purpose for being? Evolving out of that vision is the mission statement. It describes the purpose and primary objectives of the organization. Organizational values represent the core priorities in the organization culture. From my perspective, this is always an interesting component because actions speak louder than words. Are your organizations, and for that matter, your department values congruent with what people are really spending their time and energy on within your organization or within your department? Long-term goals is a series of statements that outlines what an organization plans to accomplish over the distant future, the next 10 to 20 years. It gives a context for planning and program development. To get there, one must intentionally plan or use a method of futuring, looking at not only where we want to be in the future, but envisions and prepares for worst-case scenarios and or impediments which may force adaptive change in goals along the way. The SWOT analysis is a planning process used to evaluate strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, both internally but also externally, to achieving the organization's vision and mission. Based on that analysis, one determines if an objective is attainable. If we determine it's not attainable, we choose another objective. Essentially, our task is to build a bridge of relevance. It links the service we extend to our primary customer, whether that be patient or resident or inmate or counselee or military service member, you name your primary customer, and to extend that customer in a relationship with our secondary customer, the organization itself, the organization's strategic plan, and that supervisory ladder. The stronger our linkage, the greater our organizational relevance. For instance, during my life work with the federal government, I quickly discerned I had two initial customers. One was the inmates entrusted to the care of the agency, and the second was the organization in my supervisory ladder, which responded to the directives of the Code of Federal Regulations and the President's management agenda. The ability to connect the two customers was the key to relevance. During the last 10 years of my government tenure, reentry programming and its potential to lower recidivism was a major focal point of the President's management agenda and congressional funding. Chaplaincy's task was to discover or market a constitutionally sound, faith-based approach which facilitated growth in life skills for inmates that would empower successful reentry and hence lower recidivism. And yet, since reentry and lowered recidivism using a faith-based approach was a key component of the President's management agenda, not only was funding available, but the supervisory ladder, the organization, took a special interest because the President's management agenda and the House Appropriations Committee were the drivers. And subsequently, the performance evaluation of the supervisory ladder was directly tied to it. If chaplaincy could tie in, chaplaincy became relevant. So over the course of time, we developed evidence-based outcomes directly tied to the President's management agenda as we served and prepared inmates for reentry. Through the process, we became and remained relevant. Funding, staffing, and programming significantly increased. Well, I retired from the federal system in 2010. The names of the customer have changed for me, but relevance is still based upon defining and meeting the needs of our customers, building a bridge between the two in order to be relevant. The strategy for success is fairly simple to diagram. However, it must be remembered that the process is dynamic and fluid. Our ability to be adaptable to change, reading the trends, and/or evaluating evidence-based indicators is a given for us to be successful and relevant. Hence, we can never let the process or the program become static. The process begins by our ability to identify need. See the upper right section of the cycle diagram. What are the interests of the stakeholders? What are the needs of the primary customer, patient, resident, service member? What are the interests and the needs of my organization and supervisor? How can I tie those needs with that organization's need together? Then, I need to review my resources. I need to assess what is available for me to meet that need. Or, what do I need to gather in order to try to meet the need? Those are known as the inputs. Once we've identified the customer needs and understood the resources we have on hand or that we need to gather, we can begin to draft an outcome goal. In drafting the goal, what is important to remember is what is the desired change that we're trying to accomplish in our customers. The goal is not what we do to accomplish the task. The goal is what will change for the people or the groups we serve. Is that goal then related to the core business of the organization? So, is the goal useful? Is the goal meaningful? Is it achievable, feasible, and practical? Once the goal is created, we begin the action plan. In other words, we program. What we do, the content of delivery, the number of hours we work, the training, the resources we apply to the program, etc., those are known as outputs. They're all done in order to facilitate the outcome. Now, to determine if all this energy we are expending is making a difference, to determine whether it's accomplishing the intended change for the customer, we need to also develop the measurement indicator. This is the process of collecting information and that demonstrates the outcome is attained. So the critical piece is determining the best measures. What do I measure? What should I measure? What is most vital to know And what is sustainable? Will my efforts to gather this information be sustainable? Will the information that I gather sustain what I'm trying to prove? I have found it best that whenever possible, develop the program and your measurement indicator or your evaluation instrument together. If you're in a position of limited staff and resources, it's important to limit the number of measures that track outcome attainment. Because what you'll soon discover is that limited staffing means limited energy, means limited resources by which to gather that information and still support what you're trying to accomplish. So, be specific in what you measure. We must look at when and from whom the data is collected so that in the end, what's the best measurement indicator to get at what is vital? When the information starts to come in, we begin the process of assessment. Is this information meeting the need? Are adjustments required to the action plan? Are adjustments required to the goal? Or do I need to adjust the measurement indicator? Am I getting the information I need? If so, remember this is a process that is dynamic and fluid. Adapt as necessary. This is the process for determining outcome attainment and relevancy. What, how, from whom was the information collected? We are identifying evidence which seeks to support outcome attainment. We've gathered enough information, then our responsibility is to figure out how to communicate our relevance. Part of that is tying it into the agency's strategic plan. Another part may be how we communicate that into our supervisor's performance evaluation. After all, remember that when I was with government service, and if you happen to be one who works with government service, if you make your supervisor relevant because it ties into the driver that they're having to work for, you become relevant. The other is, we need to find the ways, wherever possible, to market our relevance. The more effectively we do that through the systems that are in place, through the reputation we bring, the stronger we become in our institutional setting.